And I said, that's a terrible job. Even on your best day at work, you can punch in the face.
For more than 3 decades, Jay Leno has been one of the most recognizable faces on American television as the host of The Tonight Show. He appeared before millions of viewers every night, telling jokes, interviewing celebrities, and maintaining the image of a calm, humorous man who never seemed to break under pressure. Off the stage, he became known for his massive collection of classic cars and a life that appeared almost perfect. But behind that cheerful image was another story that Leno rarely spoke about. From a young age, he faced ridicule because of his dyslexia and his unusual appearance. When his career reached its peak, he was drawn into some of the most intense rivalries in American television. Then, one by one, members of his family passed away. These losses unfolded while he still had to walk onto the stage each night and make millions of people laugh. Childhood and early personal struggles, the roots of insecurity. Jay Leno was born on April 28, 1950, in New Rochelle, just outside New York City. His father, Angelo Leno, was an insurance salesman of Italian descent. His mother, Catherine Muir Leno, came from a Scottish immigrant family. Both parents worked long hours to support the household. Money was never abundant. His parents believed strongly in discipline and work in their home. The rule was simple: if you wanted something, you had to earn it. This environment taught Leno the value of persistence, but it also created pressure at a young age. Achievement was expected, and failure was not easily accepted. School quickly became one of Leno's biggest struggles. From an early age, he suffered from dyslexia. Reading was slow and frustrating. Simple assignments took him much longer than other students. Teachers often assumed he was not trying hard enough. Classmates noticed the difference as well. Some mocked the way he struggled with words and reading aloud. These moments created a strong sense of insecurity. Leno later admitted that during his childhood he often felt stupid, even though he knew he was working as hard as he could, instead of withdrawing completely. He found another way to cope. Humor became his defense. Making classmates laugh gave him something he could control. When people laughed, the attention shifted away from his academic difficulties. Over time, comedy became more than a coping mechanism. It became a direction. Another challenge shaped how others saw him. Leno was born with mandibular prognathism, a condition where the lower jaw extends forward more than usual. The feature made his chin and jaw unusually prominent. As he grew older, it became one of the first things people noticed about him. During his youth, the appearance led to teasing and comments from others. Plastic surgery was an option that many people suggested later in his career. Leno chose not to change it. He believed altering his face might affect how audiences recognized him. Ironically, the same feature that once caused embarrassment eventually became part of his public identity. His jawline became instantly recognizable. Many comedians even joked about it openly on television. But the early experiences left a deeper psychological mark. Feeling different in school and in appearance pushed Leno to work harder than most people around him. He often described himself as someone who simply refused to stop working. This mindset followed him into adulthood. Long hours, constant performances, and relentless effort became normal for him. In many ways, the drive that built his career was rooted in those early feelings of insecurity. The boy who once struggled in classrooms would eventually become one of the most famous figures in American television. But the motivation behind that success began with a simple desire: to prove he was capable. Career conflicts and Hollywood pressure. The tragedy of fame. By the early 1990s, Jay Leno had become a regular presence on The Tonight Show. He frequently filled in as guest host for Johnny Carson, who had led the program since 1962. When Carson announced his retirement in 1992, most people in the television industry believed the job would go to David Letterman. Letterman had built a strong following with Late Night with David Letterman. Many executives and fans assumed he was Carson's natural successor. Instead, NBC executives chose Leno. The decision shocked the late-night television world. Reports soon emerged that Leno's manager had negotiated aggressively behind the scenes with NBC executives. Critics claimed Leno had taken the chair that belonged to Letterman. The conflict became one of the most famous rivalries in television history. Letterman left NBC and moved to CBS, where he launched Late Show with David Letterman in 1993. The competition between the two hosts dominated late-night television for years. Although Leno's show eventually won the ratings battle, the controversy damaged his reputation. Some comedians accused him of ambition without loyalty. Others described him as someone willing to do anything to keep the job. For Leno, the pressure was constant. Hosting The Tonight Show required producing a new episode almost every night. Ratings were analyzed daily. Any drop in audience numbers immediately triggered concern inside NBC. The situation became even more intense nearly 2 decades later. In 2009, NBC announced that Leno would step down from The Tonight Show and pass the position to Conan O'Brien, who had hosted Late Night with Conan O'Brien since 1993. O'Brien finally took over the program in June 2009. However, ratings quickly declined. Within months, NBC proposed moving The Tonight Show to a later time slot to accommodate a new program hosted by Leno. O'Brien refused. He believed the change would damage the historic brand of the show. The conflict turned into a public dispute between NBC, O'Brien, and Leno. In January 2010, O'Brien left the network after receiving a reported $33 million settlement. Leno returned as host of The Tonight Show only a few weeks later. The backlash was immediate. Many comedians publicly supported O'Brien. Some accused Leno of reclaiming the position at the expense of a colleague. The controversy divided the comedy community and sparked intense criticism online and in the press. Leno responded mostly through humor. During interviews and performances, he often joked about the situation. However, he later admitted the conflict had been deeply painful. The pressures of the industry did not stop there. During the 2007 to 2008 strike by the Writers Guild of America, late-night shows across the United States temporarily shut down. When Leno returned to the air during the strike, critics accused him of writing his own monologue jokes without union writers. Some members of the Writers Guild argued that doing so violated the spirit of the strike. Although the Guild later cleared him of formal wrongdoing, the controversy added another layer of tension to his public image. Leno also became involved in unexpected legal attention during the 2005 trial of Michael Jackson. Prosecutors subpoenaed Leno because Jackson had reportedly called him to discuss media coverage. Leno testified in court about the conversation. The case placed him briefly in the center of a highly controversial celebrity trial. Years later, another controversy appeared in 2020 when Ellen DeGeneres faced accusations that her talk show maintained a toxic workplace environment. Leno publicly defended her character. Some viewers criticized him for supporting her during the scandal. Each of these episodes added pressure to an already demanding career. From the outside, Leno remained the smiling host who told jokes every night. But behind the scenes, his career unfolded amid constant competition, criticism, and public scrutiny. The success of late-night television brought fame and wealth. It also brought rivalries, controversies, and expectations that never stopped. For Jay Leno, the price of fame was not only hard work, it was the constant need to stand on stage and appear unaffected. Even when the industry around him was in conflict, family losses, a series of personal tragedies. As Jay Leno was building his career on The Tonight Show, his personal life began to change in ways the public rarely saw. In 1993, his mother, Catherine Muir Leno, died at the age of 82. She had always been one of the most supportive people in his life. During the early years of his career, when he performed in small comedy clubs and struggled financially, she encouraged him to keep going. Her belief in his talent gave him confidence when success was still uncertain. Her death came just as Leno was settling into his role as host of The Tonight Show. Despite the loss, he continued appearing on television every night, instead of speaking openly about his grief. He often mentioned his mother in small jokes and short stories during the show. Humor became his way of remembering her while still keeping the audience laughing. Only 1 year later, another loss followed. In 1994, his father, Angelo Leno, died at the age of 84 after suffering from heart disease. Losing both parents within such a short period was a heavy emotional blow. The two people who had shaped his childhood and taught him discipline were suddenly gone. For Leno, the experience reinforced a lesson about how fragile life could be. At the same time, it pushed him deeper into work. The demanding schedule of The Tonight Show required constant preparation and filming, and staying busy helped him avoid dwelling too long on the pain. Several years later, the most devastating loss arrived. In 2002, Leno's older brother, Patrick Leno, died from cancer at the age of 62. Patrick had served during the Vietnam War before becoming a lawyer. Leno often described him as someone he deeply admired. Among all the members of his family, Patrick was the person he felt closest to. His brother represented strength and responsibility, and their relationship remained strong throughout their adult lives. When Patrick died, the loss forced Leno to confront a painful reality. The people who had defined his early life were disappearing one by one. In later interviews, Leno admitted that his brother's death changed how he viewed time. It reminded him that success and fame could never replace family. Life, he realized, could end much faster than anyone expected. Through these years of loss, one person remained constant in his life: his wife, Mavis Leno. The two married in 1980 and built a stable relationship away from much of Hollywood's chaos. They never had children, choosing instead to focus on their work and their life together. From the outside, Leno still appeared every night as the same calm, confident television host. But behind the camera, the number of people from his past was quietly growing smaller. Each loss left its mark, even if he rarely spoke about it publicly. By the early 2000s, the laughter on stage continued as usual. Yet, privately, Leno had already experienced a series of family tragedies that would shape how he approached the rest of his life. Personal health struggles. Quiet warnings for many years. Jay Leno built a reputation as one of the hardest-working figures in television while hosting The Tonight Show. His schedule rarely slowed down. He filmed the show almost every weekday, traveled on weekends to perform stand-up comedy, and still spent long hours working on his collection of classic cars. For nearly 17 consecutive years, Leno never missed an episode of The Tonight Show. But in 2009, something changed. That year, he was forced to miss a scheduled taping after experiencing severe exhaustion. Doctors advised him to rest after signs that his body was under significant physical strain. The incident marked the first time in nearly 2 decades that he had to step away from the show because of health reasons. Reports at the time also noted that Leno had elevated cholesterol levels, which required medical monitoring. While the condition was not life-threatening, it served as an early warning that his relentless work habits were beginning to take a toll. Leno later spoke about the situation in simple terms. As someone who loved cars, he compared the human body to an engine. Even the best engine, he said, eventually needs maintenance. Ignoring small problems only leads to bigger ones later. Yet slowing down was not easy for him. The same mindset that pushed him through difficult childhood experiences, working harder than everyone else, had become part of his daily routine. Performing constantly and staying busy helped him avoid thinking about personal losses and stress. Some of that stress had deep roots, since childhood. Leno had lived with dyslexia, which had made academic life difficult and often forced him to prepare more carefully than others. Although he overcame those challenges professionally, the habit of compensating through extra work never disappeared. His distinctive facial structure, caused by mandibular prognathism, also shaped how people saw him early in life. Over time, it became a recognizable part of his public identity. But the teasing he experienced when he was younger left lasting memories, individually. These factors were not dramatic health crises. They were quieter pressures that accumulated slowly over time. Long work hours, constant public exposure, and the need to perform every night created a lifestyle that rarely allowed for rest. By the late 2000s, the exhaustion episode made something clear. Even someone as disciplined as Jay Leno could not ignore the limits of the human body forever. The warning was subtle, but it hinted at what would come in the years ahead. Recent accidents, a series of physical tragedies in the later years of his life. Jay Leno began experiencing a series of accidents that raised serious concern among fans and colleagues. These incidents were not connected to television or comedy. They were tied to one of his lifelong passions, repairing and driving classic vehicles. The most serious accident occurred in November 2022, while working inside his garage in Burbank. Leno was repairing a vintage car when gasoline suddenly sprayed onto his face and chest. A spark ignited the fuel, and flames erupted instantly. Witnesses later described the moment as a wall of fire. He was rushed to the Grossman Burn Center, where doctors confirmed he had suffered third-degree burns. Surgeons performed skin graft procedures, and he remained hospitalized for 9 days. The injuries were severe, but only a few weeks later, Leno returned to performing stand-up comedy, joking about the accident and describing it as simply a bad day in the garage. Only 2 months later, another accident followed. In January 2023, Leno was riding a vintage motorcycle near Lake Tahoe when he crashed and was thrown to the ground. The fall left him with a broken collarbone, several fractured ribs, and injuries to his knee. Doctors advised him to rest, but he again returned to public appearances sooner than many expected. Then, in 2024, Leno suffered yet another frightening fall while staying at a hotel in Pennsylvania, according to his own account. He slipped while walking on uneven ground and fell down a steep hill estimated at about 60 feet. The fall left him with a broken wrist, visible bruises on his face, and injuries around his eye. Photos of the injuries quickly circulated online, leading to speculation about what had happened. Leno dismissed the rumors and confirmed it was simply an accident, despite the injuries. He still went on stage that same evening, performing a scheduled comedy show only a few hours later. Taken together, these incidents revealed a pattern. Over a short period, Leno survived a garage fire, a motorcycle crash, and a dangerous fall. Each accident caused significant injuries, yet he repeatedly returned to work almost immediately. For many observers, the accidents raised questions about whether his relentless lifestyle and willingness to take risks had begun to catch up with him. Even so, Leno continued to respond the same way he always had, by making light of the situation and moving forward without slowing down. The present tragedy, Mavis's illness and a new role as caregiver in recent years. The most difficult challenge in the life of Jay Leno has not come from television controversies or physical accidents. It has come from inside his own home. His wife, Mavis Leno, whom he married in 1980, was diagnosed with dementia in 2024. Over time, the illness began to affect her memory and daily functioning, according to reports connected to the legal case that followed. There were moments when she could no longer clearly recognize her husband. For Leno, the situation created a painful daily reality. Dementia often causes patients to forget conversations and events repeatedly. The same confusion returns again and again. creating what some doctors describe as a constant emotional loop for both the patient and the caregiver. In early 2024, Leno filed a legal request to become the conservator of his wife's estate and personal affairs. The request was approved, giving him the authority to manage her financial decisions and medical needs. Friends close to the family noted that the decision was made primarily to protect her well-being as the disease progressed. The change also altered Leno's daily life. For decades, he had been known for an intense travel schedule, performing stand-up comedy across the United States while continuing television and automotive projects. After his wife's diagnosis, he began reducing those commitments. Instead of constantly moving from city to city, he spent more time at home. For someone who had built a life around constant work and movement, the adjustment was significant. The role he now faced was not that of a host or performer. It was the role of a full-time partner and caregiver. In many ways, this situation represents the most personal tragedy of his life. Throughout earlier crises, career controversies, accidents, and public criticism, Leno could rely on humor and work to move forward. This time, the challenge is different. Instead of racing between stages and television studios, his priority has become simply being present for one person. Conclusion: resilience, perspective, and legacy. Looking back at the life of Jay Leno, a clear pattern begins to appear. Throughout decades of success, his story has never been defined by fame alone. Instead, it has been shaped by how he responded to pressure, loss, and personal setbacks. From childhood struggles with dyslexia, to the intense rivalries surrounding The Tonight Show, to the deaths of close family members and a series of serious accidents, Leno faced challenges that could have easily forced someone to step away from public life. Yet his response rarely changed. He continued working, continued performing, and continued approaching problems with humor. Comedy became more than a profession. It became a coping strategy. When controversies erupted in Hollywood, he answered them with jokes. When physical injuries forced him into hospitals, he returned to the stage within weeks. Even during deeply personal losses, he maintained the same calm and steady public image. Over time, these experiences shaped his personality. Success made him famous, but hardship made him practical. Leno often described himself as someone who simply kept moving forward rather than dwelling on difficulties. The most recent chapter of his life shows that same attitude in a different form, as his wife Mavis Leno faces the progression of dementia. His focus has shifted from television schedules to family responsibility. The pace of his career may have slowed, but his sense of commitment remains the same. Even in his 70s, Leno continues to perform stand-up comedy and make public appearances. The stage remains part of his identity, but the experiences behind him have given his life a broader meaning. His story offers a simple reminder: fame, success, and wealth do not protect anyone from hardship. Personal loss and unexpected challenges can appear at any moment. What ultimately defines a person is not the absence of tragedy, but how they respond to it. For Jay Leno, the response has always been the same: keep going, keep working, and keep finding a reason to laugh.